Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Once again, it's my pleasure to welcome you to an event that commemorates the life of great Sri Lankan. Geoffrey Bawa was not only an inspiration to generations of Sri Lankan architects, but to many others who knew him and his work in Asia and beyond. Today, his name is legendary as one who anticipated today's concerns for the environment and developed an approach to architecture that dealt with these issues far before its time. This year, we have young Zhao to share his work and thoughts on this occasion. After studying at Tsinghua University, he established his own practice, Zhao Yang Studio, in 2007. In 2010, Yang attended the Harvard Graduate School of Design, where he received a master's degree in architecture with distinction. Located in Dali, Yunnan province, the 35-year-old Yang's studio is involved in exploring architectural solutions to the emerging urban conditions in rural China. Among his several built works, the Niang River Visitor Center in Tibet, completed in collaboration with Standard Architecture, a leading new generation design firm in Beijing, has received international acclaim as a project that successfully transforms the natural landscape and creates a sense of place in a unique way. Under the direction of his mentor, Kazuo Sejima, as part of the Rolex Mentor Protege Arts Initiative, Yang designed a home for all meeting place to help victims of the Tohoku earthquake and tsunami in Japan. We have to think about architecture in terms of the basic needs of human life, he says, of the project to design a gathering place for a devastated Japanese village. Zhao Yang was awarded the 2010 WA Chinese Architecture Award from Beijing-based World Architecture magazine in 2010. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you young Zhao to deliver the 12th Geoffrey Bawa Memorial Lecture. Zhang.
Thank you, Chenna, for your nice words. And thank you, Yanandran, for your kind invitation. And good evening. And thank you for coming. It's a really great honor for me to be here today and to share with you my experience of being an architect. I'm not from a country with a strong tradition of modern architecture, meaning that we do not have a master like Geoffrey Bawa from whom we can learn. So for young architects like me, each of us had to find our own ways to find our own path for architecture. And what I did is that I tried to learn from different people of different culture, and until I can shape my own understanding of architecture. And when I look back at my not very long journey of architecture, I found out from the very beginning that my practice is strongly bounded with rural conditions. Although China is famous for its fast, rapid urbanization, but very strangely, I have very little engagement with that part of architecture in China. I have to say I'm very lucky that by dealing with the different rural conditions that I have encountered, I started to perceive my own understanding of architecture, my own way that is related to this profession. So today I would like to share with you several key steps that marked my process of learning architecture. And the first story I'm going to tell about is a story happened in Tibet. It was in 2009 that we got this opportunity to build a visitor center at this beautiful bankside of Niang River in Linqi, Tibet. At first, we struggled very hard to find a solution that will not destroy or disturb the peaceful beauty of this place. And we tried in vain for many times, until one day the client came and we sat down, had a meeting on the function, the use of the building, which was like this. The client wanted the tourist bus take the tourists to this place, and the bus will stop, and the tourists will come down, and they will enter this building. At the same time, they will buy tickets. I think maybe that's the main purpose of the clients. But anyway, when the tourists came in, they will find the courtyard, and then they will find a place to take a rest, and also they can find a place for toilets. And maybe at some moments they can enjoy the grand view of this valley, and after doing all these activities, they can get out of this building and find their bus and get on the bus and go further into the valley. And I was surprised to find out how straightforward that architecture can just evolve from thinking about the basic use and circulation of a building. And so from that sketch, we developed this very simple plan. It's like, here is the ticket office, here is the room for changing and also taking a rest. Here are 2 toilets. Can take a bus. And then we erect a paper model to show the space. And then this was the building, how it looked like after it's finished. But besides the consideration of use and circulation, we also need to think about its scale. For example, from this side, from the valley, we need to consider its scale related to the mountain behind it, and also it has some kind of monumentality that is related to the grand scale of the natural landscape. However, at the other side of the building, which is facing the road, the building looks more humble. It has a more human scale. And from the entrance side, the building serves like a gate to the valley. At some point, the opening of the building is somehow related to the surrounding elements, such as a tree. And the construction of the building is almost a direct adaptation to the local building method. We used load-bearing stone wall for the vertical structure, and we used wooden beams to support the roof. On top of the beam, we have rafters and wooden boards, and then we have waterproofing and this traditional local clay to protect the waterproofing, and also serves as a thermal insulation for the building. And this is how the building gets constructed. It was actually quite difficult to build at such a remote place. And we was not very lucky because we had to make the foundation in flooded season. And the foundation was made of concrete. And above the concrete foundation, we erect the stone walls. And little by little, the wall grew up. It looks almost like a ruin. And then the walls are finished, and we start to make the wooden beams. Because we have some of the span of the building was quite huge, we need to add up these small timber members into a big beam. And we found a crane to put them onto the building. At some point, we need to use them as cladding to protect the surface of the wooden beam and also give the building a more unified looking. And this is what we did for the roof because it is still considered to be a modern building and for contemporary use. So we had to use this modern material to protect the roof. And then we put a layer of earth, a clay on top of it, and we need to stiffen it. And at the same time, we add water, and then the clay will just get more and more stiffened. And it serves both as thermal insulation and also waterproofing, another waterproofing. And so this image shows how the building was almost finished. And when we walked in, we found the shape of the interior quite intriguing. It has different gestures from different perspectives. But we found it's not exciting enough. And before the project, we visited the site and we found a nearby temple which used a local way to apply color onto building, and we just love the way they deal with the color. And then when we came back, we made a color scheme out of the inside of the building to give the tourist a unique experience when they get into the building. What we did was that we went to an ancient temple and we found some local mineral pigments, and we mixed them with architectural glue, and we did some mock-up to test the color relationships. And then we just painted them on the walls. And it turned out to be quite interesting phenomenon. And because the color is applied directly onto the rough surface of stone, so even if it's just blue, it has thousands of hues of blue. And also at different time of the day, the appearance of the building changes so differently. And sometimes the light phenomenon is just magic. So it's actually a very different experience from inside and outside. From outside, it's like a humble building that is peacefully setting into its environment. But when you walk inside, you have this very surprising effect of color and light. And so this is the first rural project that I feel attached to, that I feel I learned something from. And then the second story I'm going to tell about is a community project, which was a work with my mentor, Kazuyo Sejima, in Japan. And back in 2012, which means 3 years ago, I was very lucky to be selected as Sejima's protege for the Rolex Mentor and Protege program. And actually, the program didn't ask for a project, but Sejima insisted that we have to make a building because he said architecture cannot be taught just by talking. We have to do something together. So Kazuyo Sejima found a project. Actually, she found the project and she created the condition for the project to happen for me. And we went to the Tohoku region, a city called Kesenuma. It's a city almost destroyed by the tsunami and earthquake back in 2011. And the site was chosen at the harbor, a fisherman's harbor. And on this site, there was originally a building, an old building, which was completely smashed by the tsunami. The building was used as a community center, which means the fishermen, they will come and spend some time, take some rest before they set out to sea to fishing. And also, when they come back from sea, they will spend some time inside the building. And their wives and friends, sometimes they will just gather here and to wait for them to come back. So it's like the most public corner of that village. And it's very difficult to work in such an unfamiliar culture because even for the architects in Tokyo, it's hard to imagine doing a project in Tohoku region because it's like they are very remote from their mainstream culture. So it was quite challenging to persuade the local people to accept my design. So during the 4 months of schematic design, we did many schemes to show them and to persuade them. The process was like a series of workshops with the local community. So what we did is that I would design and make some model and make a presentation file, and I would travel to Japan, meet Sejima-san, and we discuss for a little bit, and we travel together to the site. And then we have several meetings in this kind of room, and I will introduce the design, and Sejima would translate for me and somehow say some nice words about the design. And sometimes we also discuss about the project at the meeting. And actually our clients are very professional on architecture, so they are very demanding on the design. But normally the atmosphere is quite pleasant because whether they liked our design or not, they are happy with this attitude of this really communicating with them, really care about what they want. And I will quickly show how the design was developed. This was the first scheme we did for them. It's like a very simple public living room with a circular backyard. The backyard is like a round wall protecting the place away from the nearby road. They said, okay, this is nice, but this is not our lifestyle because before going fishing, we do not want to stay in such a nice interior. What we like is a kind of place called engawa. Engawa is just like a Japanese veranda. So it's like a place with a roof open to the climate. So I said, okay. So we did another design to respond to that, which was like this. We had this carefully designed interior, and we have a big roof covering it. And then when they saw this, they said, okay, this is nice too, but the proportion of the interior to the exterior is not right because we need less interior and bigger this veranda space. So I said, okay, we move forward to another scheme, which is quite straightforward. We did a very small interior, and we have a bigger canopy, like a cover, to cover this small interior. It was like this. And the problem of this project is that, okay, they think this design almost meets all their needs. But the only problem is that if we make a jacket like this, structurally it's quite expensive. And the structural engineer said it will double the budget that we have. And also the client, the community explained that they didn't need an upper floor like this. This is like too touristy. Only tourists climb up and have a look at the sea, because we go to sea every day. We don't need to look at it. And so we tried another approach, which is like an open ground floor with a big roof. So people can just move around. Inside, there's a small kitchen, there's a staircase, there's a small toilet. And interesting thing happens as the active space. But again, they like the lower part of the building. They say the upper part is not necessary, because the fishermen, their lifestyle is like when they went back from the sea, they are very kind of wet. They wear their boots, and they don't want to take off their boots very immediately after work. They just want the place to be very rough, sometimes dirty. And then the upper part, which is kind of my inspiration, was not relevant to them. So in the end, after all these failures, we came to the real idea of the building, which was kind of inspiration from the primitive heart of Indian people. This is a drawing showing at the center of this tent, there's fire, there's a skylight, so there's warmth, there's ventilation, and so when you get closer to the center, you get more public. And you want to stay alone, you get to the periphery of the space. And this actually became the idea, the inspiration for the final project. So we presented a plan like this, where we had this small kitchen, and we have this toilet, and a kind of semi-exterior space like the gala. And these small functional spaces, they embrace a center. And this is the conceptual model for the project. From inside, we can see the surrounding landscape through these openings. And we did a photo collage to put the building onto the site. And actually the local people liked it very much. But another issue came is that what we are suggesting here in this model is that the building is made of steel plates. The vertical structure, they're just very kind of thick steel plates. But because the building is so close to sea, and the air is very humid and salty, it can just make the steel rust very quickly. And also, the structural engineer estimated that this structure is also will double the budget that we have. So we had to adapt to another method of construction, which is to use concrete as the supporting structure. And above the concrete walls, we have this steel frame. And above steel frame, we have steel C-channel rafters. And then the rest of things are quite straightforward. We have this plywood roof, plywood ceiling, and galvanized steel sheets for the protection of the roof. And then that's how the new modified model of the building. And then we did another photo collage onto the site. Now we feel maybe it doesn't look that obvious as the former scheme, but it looked quite humble. And then it was constructed in this the structure was finished. And then it was cladded with plywood. And these are the series of photos after completion. This is from the harbor. And when we get closer and closer, and we can feel the relationship between the roof shape and the mountain beyond, and also the nearby villages. And we designed the ground level in relation to the planning level of the surroundings. So the surrounding ground will be later paved by the government, and it will be flat inside out. So forklifts, they can carry fish or other goods into the building. Sometimes the building is going to be used like a temporary fishing market. And this part is the toilet, and this is the kitchen. Kitchen, we have glazing on both sides to protect people from really extreme weather. From the inside. And we still have a very small amount of money we can purchase some furnitures. And this was a ceremony after the building get finished. And the local people, they are performing kind of the tuna catching dance. And this was the veranda space, the Ngawa space, which is multifunctional. And that time it was used like a platform. And these are some images sent by the locals afterwards. And this one showing the building was used as a fish market. And they told me that this was the abalone catching season, so all the abalone will be weighed here before and sent into Tokyo. So this was how the building was used sometimes in real time. And because the fishermen, they set out to sea very late at night and coming back very early in the morning. So the light is very important for the building. And what we designed is very simple, is to use this timber facade, timber surface to reflect the light and make it very warm. So it serves like a lighthouse waiting for the fishermen to come back from sea. And this is the second story. And then I'm talking about a little bit about my place. And after graduation from the GSD at Harvard, I choose to base my practice in a small, remote place in Dali. It's called Dali in Yunnan province. It's in southwest China. And this is the landscape of that place. It's like a region surrounding a big lake. And at the side of the lake, there are agricultural fields. And among the agricultural fields, there are villages like this. Because many Chinese cities, like Beijing or Shanghai or Guangzhou and Hangzhou, they are very polluted. So people from these big cities, they start to immigrate to Dali to find their own new home. And sometimes they just rent or buy a small piece of land to create their house or small hotel. They can make a business and make a living. And I found them to be my very nice clients. And also because these are agricultural lands and these are villages. According to the Chinese law, developers cannot just erase these things and just make big developments. So the only kind of development that could take place in Dali is very small intervention. That is just the situation. and I quite enjoy that. And I'm talking about the first project we did there, which was on an island inside that lake. It's an island made of 2 pieces of rock hill, and in between the 2 pieces of rock, there's flat land where they have this traditional fishing village. And if we look at how the village was developed, we can see that when they used all the land here, they developed along the shoreline. What they did, because it's rock, they just chop off the cliff. So after chopping the cliff, they get a small flat piece of land for their house. At the same time, they also have some rocks for building material. And the project we did is here at this turning point of the island. It's considered to be the last piece of land available on that island, because if you turn this side, it's going to be very windy, not good for living. And this image shows how the island looks like from the other side of the lake. So each time we go to the site, we have to take this kind of boat bus. And this was the site, how the site looked like when we first arrived. We can see the rocks on the site. And we thought we can use this material for the building. And then we found the local masons and make walls for the building. And for other materials, we have to transport from outside. So the easiest way to do is to transport light material, which is wood. So we kind of developed a plan for the building in collaboration with a local carpenter. And the plan, if we look at the plan, it's also quite unique, because there are actually 2 pieces of land. They belong to 2 brothers. And my client, who rented these 2 pieces of land, wanted to make it as one hotel. So the question is that how to make them as one hotel or feel like one hotel. What I did is to create this 70-meter long corridor as the main circulation for the hotel. And then we create this shared space like a courtyard in between. So in this way, to relate 2 buildings together. And this is the model we made with the carpenter. And then they started to work on the structure. And sometimes we need to discuss about the details of this structure with the carpenter. And then they start to put things together. And this was a photo taken before the final assembling of the structure. And at one day, it's considered to be a lucky day. They just found like all the young men from the islands to work on this site to erect the whole structure. And we used the stones on the site for the foundation of the columns. It's also a very important day for the local people. They will put on their traditional dress and pray together. And these are some snapshots from the construction site. And this is the main frame and rafters. And this was the building with this triangular courtyard. And this was how the structure got finished. It turned out to be much lighter than I imagined. although it's a very traditional way to make a building. Some spaces. And on top of these rafters, we had to develop a new kind of a roof system. Because it's a modern hotel, we need to make it waterproofing. And sometimes we have new challenges because normally a traditional pitched roof is double pitched. And what we have now is just one slope. And so we have to deal with certain joints, certain part of the building in our own ways. For example, here, we need to find a way to protect the eave of the wood. What we did is we found some copper, and we found a local factory to make them into these forms. And very difficultly, we transport them again onto the island, and to put them at the edge of the wood to protect it from the rain. After that, we use traditional tiles to make the roof. Again, because this is a single slope, which is quite abnormal in that region. So for each tile detail, we need to discuss with the craftsman. So actually, each edge of the roof has a different way to put the tiles together. And this was how the roof was finished. And the close-up of a roof. And here I would like to show you a video of this construction, and maybe it can give you a better idea of how Dali looks like and how the construction took place. Okay, so because China is vast, we have very developed cities like Shanghai or Beijing. In those places, we have the most advanced building technologies. But in this very inland China, this is also part of the reality. Most of the work is very straightforward. They don't need to be trained. So the construction can be very rough. So you see, if they found wall is a little bit too tall, they just tear it down. It wasn't easy for him. This was a moment the local people use it to watch the dragon boat competition happened on the lake. So at that time, it was like a kind of a home for project there. But actually, it's a hotel. But unfortunately, it turned out to be a very slow project, and we are still working on the hotel part of it, like the interior. and the last story I'm going to spend some time with is somehow related to my experience in Sri Lanka. Because last February I visited Sri Lanka and I visited several projects of Geoffrey Bawa, and I have to admit that it would be very difficult to avoid being influenced by him after watching his projects. And actually, when I got back to China, I got a client coming to me, and he's a young traditional Chinese painter, and he lives away like the traditional Chinese does. And he does perfect calligraphy and painting. And he also has a wonderful collection of antiquities and furnitures. And he told me that he found a piece of land in Dali, which is at the edge of a village, facing a big piece of rice field. And this was a picture we went to see the site. This is the rice field. And the other side are the neighboring courtyard house and mountains beyond it. It's a beautiful site for a house. And before I started to work, he actually made a sketch first with Chinese brushes and showed me that this is somehow the scenario in his imagination of the house. And he even made a plan before me. And although it didn't really work, but it suggested some intentions of his lifestyle. And I said, okay, let me show you something. It's from a master. It's the plan of number 11. And I said, it's not that we're going to copy this master, it's that this kind of lifestyle to organize all the spaces around a series of gardens, this feeling of very inside looking is very nice for your lifestyle. And it's also a very Chinese sense of living. He said, yes, why not? I like it. Then we developed a plan from this idea. If we read carefully at the plan, it's like this. So we approach this building from an alley, and we make a turn. We see this wall, we make a turn, and we enter from this entrance, and here is like a lobby facing a very narrow skylight. And then we make a turn until we find this front courtyard, which is the biggest courtyard in the house. And then we found here is the guest corner, and here is the kitchen and the dining place. And then from here we enter the central courtyard of the house. At the east side of this courtyard, we have this living room, and which is looking at the rice field. And then from this gate beyond, we have this very private sector of the house where we have this artist studio, which is facing his own courtyard. And also we have the artist's study, his wife's study, and their bedroom, and the toilet. And then also, they required another kind of circulation for the building is that, so when the wife is meeting her guests in this place, and the husband doesn't want to meet them, he can actually escape from this very narrow passage. At the same time, it's also a passage that organizes two very small courtyards. He likes to put bamboo in the courtyard. So, and sometimes you can have a peek at the central courtyard, and then you can walk out. And we developed a model to show the space. And this, for the appearance of the building, it's almost like a result. We actually didn't care very much about it. We think it's going to be, because he had very limited money to make the structure. So he said, okay, we just make it white. We just make the house with walls, and that's the cheapest way. So it's kind of a result of the life happens inside. And we made simple renderings to show how the space may feel like. And also, we had a lot of meetings to discuss with the client about his collections of furnitures and antiquities. And we had to talk carefully about how to put this kind of scholar stone and where to put it. It's like designing the sequence of appreciation of a museum. And where to put these furnitures. They are just nice furnitures from different historical times of China. We also talk about what kind of plants we want to use in the gardens. And sometimes he showed me his collection of this kind of bricks with beautiful Chinese characters on side. I said, maybe we can just put them on the wall. So for me, this is like the first project in which I can really discuss about lifestyle in a building so carefully. So a lot of this work. And so therefore, in the end, the plan, each corner of it is very exactly designed. And then, like 2 months ago, we started the construction of the building. And yesterday, the building was like this. They just finished the formwork of the roof. And the couple is supposed to move in by this October. I think the inspiration, I have to admit, is from really by looking at Geoffrey Bawa's work, the number 11 house. And I heard that in Colombo, in Sri Lanka, there is kind of movement that the young architects wants to strive to get out from under the Bawa umbrella. Is that what it said? And because as an architect, I got to know about Geoffrey Bawa only for 4 years, so I guess I can maybe stay under this umbrella a little longer. So I think with this unfinished project, I want to use this opportunity to remember and learn from Mr. Geoffrey Bawa. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Yang, for that lovely inspirational talk. Is there any questions from Yang? He's willing to take a few questions, if any of you have anything to ask. We have a few minutes to do that. Why don't you stand up?
Okay, blank.
Yes. You might have to just shout, I think. Yeah.
Thanks very much for a very inspirational talk. I was wondering, my wife is from Shanghai. I've been to Shanghai several times. I was wondering, Dali, I've never been to Dali, and I was wondering how you showed the spaces. They look quite grand inside the volume. So is that the total project?
The spaces inside the hotel project looked rather grand.
You mean the timber project? With the big roof? No, actually, it's not. It's actually the typical traditional timber structure in Dali is they have very small span, and the space is very limited. And what we wanted to do for one of the space of the hotel is to make a multifunctional room, which has to be very big. And so that's why I mentioned it's a collaboration with the local craftsmen. They couldn't imagine a building like that themselves. So it's after discussion we get to that result. The lucky thing we have in Dali is that it's very cool. So, and also it's very dry and windy. So ventilation is actually very easy to handle. So it's the in its climate is so different from Sri Lanka. Yes, I actually introduced all these projects from the sequence of time. Like the first one in Niyang River in Tibet, that happened early. And then this one is we just started last summer.
Yes, there's no other questions. So once again, thank you very much, Yang, for being with us and making such a wonderfully inspirational speech.
It's my honor and pleasure.
And I'm sure Geoffrey would have loved to work on some of those projects, particularly those people pulling stuff up and getting things going. And it's wonderful to see the work you're doing, because we are so used to seeing China as this incredible, fast-moving, big city place. And it's lovely to see another side of an incredible culture that is quite close to us. So thank you very much for being here.
Thank you for inviting me.
It's been a great pleasure to have you. Well, before we break, I do have to make a few acknowledgements and thanks. First, of course, to Miles Young, who's not here with us today, but who over the years, for almost 10 years, have sponsored the Geoffrey Bawa Memorial Lecture. We thank the Trust. On behalf of the Trust, I'd like to thank him very much for continuing to support this endeavor. The staff of the Sri Lanka Foundation, who once again have risen to the occasion and helped us set it all up. The staff of Swedish Trading Company for doing all the work with the electronic, the projectors and everything else. We also have to thank our media partners, Sunday Times and the Daily Mirror, for supporting us over many of our projects, the Trust projects. They have always come on board and helped us with media and so on. And of course, the Trust wishes to thank our own Priyanka Tisavira-Singer, without whom the Trust would find it difficult to do this on its own. And of course, last but not least, to each one of you for being here to listen to Yang and also to remember the great architect, Geoffrey Bawa. So thank you very much for being here year after year, and hopefully the Trust will continue to bring in architects who will reveal various things about their own lives over the years to us. So let me, at this point, invite all of you to have a cup of tea out there in the veranda at the end of this. Thank you very much.